Did you know that there is less than 36% of all real estate agents in the United States that are commercial real estate brokers? My name is Renee Nelson, and I'm the proud owner of PacWest Commercial Real Estate. And I thought today I would just tell you my story and how I got where I'm at. So 66% of the real estate agents, according to the National Association of Real Estate Agents, are female real estate brokers. So there's a total of 975,000 real estate brokers, which means there's 643,500 women that are residential real estate brokers. But guess what? There's only 36% that are commercial real estate brokers. There's 150,000 commercial real estate brokers across the United States. So if there's 36% that are women, that means there's 54,000 women. And I happen to be lucky enough to be one of them. And I'm also proud to say that I'm a CCIM. My CCIM number that I earned is 15,000, in the 15,000 range. A lot of CCIMs age out, or they no longer want to have the designation because it's really difficult to earn your CCIM designation. And once you earn it, you never want to give it up. So currently there's 9,500 CCIMs across the United States. It's also an international designation, but I'm only counting what's in the United States, and there's 9,500 currently, and I'm lucky enough to be one of them. So I thought I would just tell you my story. If you look at some of my earlier YouTubes on this channel, you'll see my husband, Bob Nelson, introduce me, and I looked like a young kid at the time. It's kind of funny to look back at those videos, even though they were just a couple of years ago. So my story is, in 1987, I was working at a local credit union in Eugene, and I wanted to further my education, and I decided that I was going to go to night school and earn my real estate degree, because there in our local newspaper, every annual year, once a year, there was a big display that was put in our local newspaper, and it was called the $1 Million Club. And I always thought, wow, they made $1 million. Well, what that means is they actually closed $1 million in transactions. They didn't put $1 million in their pocket in commissions necessarily, but it being in my 20s, I didn't necessarily know that. But I just saw that, and a lot of the professional women that were in that organization would come into the credit union and deposit checks. So I would see them in their nice suits, their Gucci handbags, and driving white Mercedes. And when you're in your 20s, sometimes that can become enticing. So I decided that I was going to go to night school and earn my degree in real estate. Well, I happened to fall in love with my husband, who was the instructor at the time. Probably not PC correct nowadays, but we were married for 30 wonderful years before he passed away, and I'll share that story coming up. But I did go to night school. I earned my degree in real estate, and in 1989, I became a mortgage broker. And I can remember signing the lease on my for my mortgage company. I can remember signing the lease for my mortgage company and them handing me the key, and I opened the door and swung it open, and there was nothing. There was not a stick of furniture. There were no employees. There was nothing. And my partner said, "Go create us a mortgage company." Okay, I should probably back up and tell you why I got a degree in real estate, but then became a mortgage broker. So my husband at the time sold commercial real estate during the day and taught night classes on how to become a licensed real estate broker. In Oregon, you sat through several series of classes. I believe it's 120 hours now, and then you can set for your exam. So at the time, I earned my real estate license, but then my husband, who I was just dating at the time, said, "Oh, you should think about becoming a mortgage broker instead of a real estate broker," because back in the 80s, real estate brokers were pretty much on call 24 hours a day. That was way before Zillow and the things that we could do on our phones. That was before fax machines. Fax machines were just popular, but cell phones weren't in existence. I can still remember getting my first bag phone as a real estate agent. So he talked me out of becoming a real estate agent and talked me into becoming a mortgage broker, because while I was working at the credit union, I was doing a lot of home equity loans and different involvement with real estate. And I really enjoyed the real estate aspect of it, but I really enjoyed the numbers and the lending component. So my husband said, you should become a mortgage broker. And the funny thing is, I didn't even know what a mortgage broker was. He had to explain it to me in depth, that you basically go to work for a lending institution. Most of the time you're on 100% commission, and you go out and you build your book of business by building relationships with real estate brokers who will send you business. So I became a mortgage broker in 1989, opened my own company with some partners who operated a very successful local real estate company. And I had the opportunity to have an office inside this successful real estate company, which is now Windermere. And that was a very good experience for me. And I was able to build a very successful mortgage company. I got married to my sweetheart in 1991, and he was always my cheerleader and kind of just in the wings, but I really operated the mortgage company on my own. I had 15 employees, and I did that for 17 years, and it was so much fun. It was super rewarding. We had some great times and we had some tough times. When interest rates go up, it's not a lot of fun. When you have to call somebody and tell them, I'm sorry, your loan's been declined because of your credit issues or the property didn't appraise, those are tough to do. So it's not all roses and perfect rainbows, but overall, it was a really good career and I really enjoyed it. But fast forward to the wild and crazy days of the mortgage industry. I don't know if you've watched Wolf on Wall Street or The Big Short. Those are two of my most favorite movies to watch. I really like Wolf on Wall Street because it really shows how egregious some of those high earning executives were living and just the lifestyle. And I saw a lot of that with the mortgage professionals who were the wholesale reps. So in my mortgage business, we would prepare a loan and then we would sell it after 30 to 60 days. We would sell it to a warehouse company like a Chase Mortgage or lenders like that. And they would have these account executives that would come in and call on us and try to get us to send more business to them because I was approved with about 60 different wholesale lenders, but you really had your favorite 3 or 4 because of the underwriters and you knew the guidelines and just the different things. And one day I had an account executive from Portland come down in my office and tell me that he was there to encourage me to send more business to them. And I said, Steve, I know your rules and your guidelines, and my loans that I'm doing don't fit all of your criteria. So that's why some of these loans are subprime and going to other lenders. And he said, yeah, my boss and I have been talking about that, and we know the volume that you do. And so we're here to help you figure out or show you how to make more of these loans fit our criteria. So really what he was telling me is he wanted me to commit fraud. And I went home that night. Now, mind you, I had been in the mortgage business 18, 19 years, loved my career. And I went home that night and told my husband that I was leaving the mortgage industry. It was right before the meltdown of 2004, but I just knew that there was handwriting on the wall that we were in trouble as a nation and that my industry, being a mortgage broker, was in trouble. I was doing mortgage loans for people that I knew really shouldn't be buying houses. They really didn't have the income. We were doing no documentation loans. They were all legal and they all fit the criteria for the lender, but I knew in my heart that that wasn't the right loan for a 20-year-old person to buy a $400,000 house just because they wanted a party house, as an example. And imagine back then in 2000 what a $400,000 house payment would cost you. So I decided, because this lender was encouraging me to commit fraud, and I knew other people in my industry that were committing fraud. They were making false bank statements. I knew one person that had 3 or 4 cell phones on her desk, and she would answer each phone based on who she thought needed to have employment verification. I mean, fraud was rampant, and I just decided I didn't want to do that. So when I went home that night and told my husband I was leaving the mortgage industry, he asked me, he said, what are you going to do? And I thought in my mind, I don't know. I'll become a dog walker. I'll teach jazzercise. And I wasn't even really that healthy at that point. So I would have taken me a little bit to become a jazzercise instructor. But I was just so committed to walking away from the fraud and the pressure that was in the mortgage industry that I really didn't quite yet have a vision for where I was headed, but I knew I was leaving. And I had a production team that I had shared that with that day, that I was going to make a change, and that I assured each of them financial strategies to get to a new team, that I would help transition them to a new team, and that it'd be a couple of months so they'd have time to transition themselves and they wouldn't have any financial hardship. And when I told my husband that night, he said, well, you should come to work in my business as a commercial real estate broker, because the mortgage industry was tanking and going down. Interest rates were starting to go up. Underwriting was becoming tougher and tougher, but the commercial real estate business was going through the roof. And he was super busy. He didn't have an assistant at the time. And so he said, you should come to work for me. And I thought, do I want to do that? I don't know. I don't know if I could work with my husband. I loved him, but I just didn't know if I could go to work with him. And so I decided that I would think about it for a couple of days. And then I decided, yes, that's what I wanted to do. So I made a decision that I would earn my CCIM credentials as soon as possible, because I wanted to be recognized in my industry as knowledgeable and knowing what I was doing, and not as Bob's wife. My husband had sold commercial real estate his whole career. He had been a very successful commercial real estate broker for 35 years in our local area. And I knew that it was a pretty male-dominated business for commercial real estate at the time when I got into it. And I knew that the other males would let me in, but I wanted in because I deserved to be in. So I signed up for CCIM classes, and now they have an introduction class, which I think is 2 days, and they teach you some of the basics of how to use a financial calculator, how to do some of the easy crunches of numbers so that you can start into the classes. Because in order to become a CCIM, there are core classes, plus you have to take a couple of additional classes like a negotiation class and an ethics class and some additional educational classes. Plus you have to sell and prove in a portfolio that you have sold $10 million worth of commercial real estate, and you have to demonstrate that in a portfolio, which you submit. My portfolio was about 4.5 inches thick when I did it. Nowadays, you do it online, but back then I had to put mine in a 3-ring binder with all of the pages and stuff. I still have it, by the way. So you submit a portfolio, and then you set for a 6-hour open book exam. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, open book exam, how tough could that be? Well, it's actually the opposite. I think open book exams are tougher because they're giving you the opportunity to use any of your resources that you have. So when you talk about an open book exam, you may think, well, open book exam, how tough can that be? I think it's actually harder because of the fact that they're giving us the opportunity to look through all of our manuals and all of our books and all of our information, all your spreadsheets that you've built in all these classes. But oh, by the way, you have to complete this very difficult, and it's problem oriented. So you have to read a problem and then solve it mathematically with software and with spreadsheets. It's a pretty tough exam. I've known people that have failed it and have had to take it multiple times. I was lucky enough to pass it the first time, but it was a really tough exam. But the good news is once you pass it and you earn your credentials, then as long as you continue to pay your dues and you're bound by the code of ethics, as long as you adhere to the code of ethics and you pay your dues, you get to continue to use your CCIM credentials. And I wanted those because, again, I respect people in my industry, but I wanted them to respect me, and I wanted them to see that I had the knowledge and the information, and more importantly, that I was going to do my part of the process when we entered into a transaction. So being a former mortgage lender, I'm a pretty good project manager because I know start dates, due dates, end dates, and death dates. If you miss a date, how critical that is. In the lending world, if you miss a date and somebody's interest rate expires, they may potentially not be able to qualify because now interest rates might have gone up and they may not qualify, so they could lose their house. And in the flip side, in commercial real estate, if you miss a deadline, if it's a 1031 exchange, I could cost my clients millions of dollars. One mistake on missing a deadline could be really, really critical. So being a project manager is probably one of the fun aspects of my business because I get to help my clients go through the process of buying and selling commercial real estate, and I get to kind of manage the process and help prevent their anxiety. I get to reassure them that we're on track and what's happening with the process and the dates. And that's just really rewarding to me to be involved with that part of the process. So you may be asking yourself, how do you get involved with real estate? The number one thing that you want to do is start with education and classes. For residential in particular, as well as commercial real estate, you can take all of the classes online, and you just log on to either ccim.com or look. So if you want to get started in real estate, look for classes in your local area. You can do them online. You can look through nar.com. You can just Google real estate classes in your state, or you can look for CCIM classes. And here's the really cool thing. Most CCIM chapters offer a scholarship. And what that means is if you've completed CCIM 101 and completed that first basic class, then CCIM 102, 103, or 104, you could receive a scholarship from your local chapter that would cover the cost of that class. And I would recommend that if you're interested in getting into real estate, whether it's residential or commercial, if you've got the drive and you have earned the degree, so you've taken the classes, you've got the knowledge, and now you have the certificate that says you are a real estate broker, then what I would do is I would start looking for a mentor. In residential, your principal broker will often connect you with a mentor in your office. They're going to teach you the basics of how to use the forms, how to fill out the forms, how to negotiate a price adjustment or an addendum for a repair or things like that. But in commercial real estate, you want that knowledge also, but you really need more in-depth knowledge, because then what you're looking for is you need information and education on negotiations. You need to be able to think big picture. If my client is selling a property and they're going to do a 1031 exchange and go forward, what property are we going to go into? And you also need to be able to say no in this business and have boundaries, because often other brokers may not have the same drive that you have, and they may be a little lazy, or they may not be great with their paperwork. And there's times that could create an issue for you, where if you have a set time period for when your due diligence should be completed and you're representing the seller, you want the buyer's agent to make sure they're meeting their deadlines, because it could put you behind the eight ball if your seller is trying to buy something and 1031 exchange forward. So having a really good understanding of how real estate works is really wise. I recommend for a lot of people, if you want to get into commercial real estate, it's pretty tough to get into it, because a lot of principal brokers don't want the risk to hire a brand new agent. If you go to some of the bigger cities, there are large national commercial real estate companies that will hire young people. They hire people right out of college and will put you in a bullpen and point to a phone and say, make 65 phone calls a day for 90 days or you're out. That's pretty tough to do. That's pretty tough to sit there and cold call. We've all seen Glenn Carey, Glenn Ross, and some of those funny movies where, you're in a bullpen environment making phone calls until you land a whale. But in commercial real estate, what I would recommend, if you're trying to get started in it, consider going into residential and sell residential for a year or two and learn the forms, learn the process, really get good at your craft, really hone it and own it. Get good at negotiations, get good at negotiating repairs, get really good at listening to what your clients need and figuring out how to solve those problems. Because if you can do that in residential, then it segues a lot easier into commercial. And often in commercial real estate, I may work on a transaction for a whole year before my deal closes and I earn a commission. I've also had really big transactions where we've had them on the market for a year. I've had a boutique hotel on the market for a year. It didn't sell, and so the owner decided to take it off the market. I've also had RV parks, different properties where we put it on the market, maybe we didn't get an offer, and so it came off the market for a while. So you have to be ready, not necessarily to have a consistent paycheck if you want to become a commercial real estate broker. But if you're interested in doing it, Do it. Don't talk yourself out of it. I talked my mother into leaving a career from the United States Postal Service when she was in her late 50s. And she had a pretty good job. She was in the accounting department at the Postal Service. She had a degree in accounting. She had everything she needed that she could have just stayed where she was at and rode into retirement. But I talked her into attending a real estate convention with me in Hawaii, and she was hooked. She went to the seminars with me, sat through a couple of classes, and before we even flew home, she told me that she was going to quit her job at the post office and become a real estate broker. So she did that in her late 50s. If she can do it, you can do it. And guess what? She built an amazing real estate portfolio where she bought an owner-occupied duplex, and she moved every 12 months so that she could get an owner-occupied loan. And she and my dad rolled up their shirt sleeves and they mowed lawns, they painted houses, they replaced roofs, they ripped out kitchens and remodeled and renovated. And she has now successfully built a very successful real estate portfolio that has allowed her to comfortably retire. And now she's just doing her hobbies and enjoying life. So from my perspective, I'm in my mid-50s. I am really traveling a lot. I've got the bug to travel. I've got a good friend that has a Mercedes Sprinter van, and we like to hike and spend a lot of time traveling. And my goal is to inspire women to get into real estate, especially commercial real estate, and really provide your own destiny and create your own financial freedom. It's great to be married. As I mentioned, I was married for 30 years. I had a wonderful husband. He was a great mentor to me. But I also really feel proud that I am successful on my own now, and that I'm confident and I'm comfortable in headed towards retirement. I know I have the money set aside that I need for retirement, and I want to teach other women how to do that. So if you're not happy with your job, or if you want a side hustle, you can do a side hustle with selling real estate in residential, but in commercial real estate, it's a full-time job. You really owe it to yourself, and more importantly, to your clients, to make it a full-time career in commercial real estate. You can't have one foot in and one foot out, because too many things can go wrong, and you're dealing with somebody's net worth, and it's a lot of money, and they're expecting you to deliver the results. So if you want to get into commercial real estate, I would encourage you to take a serious look at it. And again, go to ccim.com, take a look at their classes, subscribe to my channel, leave me a comment down below, let me know what state you're in, and I look forward to sharing more stories with you.